It is June 2025. Welcome to the God 18 video. This one is titled Magnificent or Maleficent. All will become clear, or as clear as I can make it anyway. First things first, I don't like to do this, and I know most YouTubers do, but I'd just like to invite viewers to click on the like or subscribe button below the video, because these things really do help a video's fortunes in terms of its getting seen and just driving up the traffic and such. And I would like these videos to get seen by as many people as possible, because it's pretty damn important given the subject matter. I'm sure you would agree. So you might be viewing this on one of my two YouTube channels. There's my dedicated God Talks channel, which houses all my material of this nature. And there's my regular Mark Devlin channel, which also features my music industry research stuff as well. So whichever of those YouTube channels you're on, please just click like and subscribe there. And you might be viewing this also on Odyssey or Rumble, which are the remaining alternative video platforms now that BitChute has gone. So that's that. I posted a video this week to my Patreon channel, which I did want to put on YouTube, but I realized that if I had, it would have been instantly taken down because it contained a load of clips from TV shows and movies. So YouTube being what they are, on copyright grounds, they would have instantly just taken that video off. So I decided to put it on Patreon instead. And this does tie into what I get into in these videos, because it was my guide to my favorite allegorical films and TV shows. So popular culture vehicles that have been used to symbolically present many of the themes and the ideas that I've been getting into in these videos concerning the true nature of this realm, the true nature of the entity or force that may have created it, that we think of as God. And it seems that many program and filmmakers have this kind of knowledge, and they've been encoding it into their works of apparent fiction for decades. I mean, we know this is the case with conspiracy stuff and real world stuff, and the way that the nuts and bolts of this physical reality work, but it also seems to have been happening on a cosmic spiritual sort of scale as well. So this video contains my 6 suggestions as to some of the very best allegories for these ideas. And a couple of the examples go into these more new agey ways of thinking, in terms of Earth being a schoolhouse, it's here for our benefit, our souls come here to grow and evolve, and we need to learn lessons in order to break the cycle of karma, and all of this sort of stuff. So these movies that I've mentioned kind of reinforce those ideas, and they're not necessarily ideas I'm down with, but nevertheless, these are themes that have been cleverly encoded into the narrative of these very mainstream TV shows and movies. So if you do want to see that video, it's on my Patreon channel. So you need to become a Patreon supporter to view it, but this is a very good way of supporting me in my work if you found value in it. So we're 18 videos deep in this series, so for anyone that has appreciated the content and would like to see it continue, and maybe just wants to support me in what I do, because I need to continue doing it, and this is my job, and I don't really do anything else other than my books and my talks and my podcasts, then supporting me on Patreon is just a great way of getting involved. So the link to the channel is in the notes below. So for anyone that's not already a Patreon supporter that wants to go across there and have a look at some of my other work, then you can do that. And most of my output on that channel concerns my music industry research, shining the spotlight on the true nature of that particular institution. Bit of news about some guests that I was hoping to get on this channel. I was all set to have a chat with Isabella Green. Very interesting lady. She's got some pretty unique perspectives on things to share, and we were all due to record a show a few days ago. Unfortunately, something came up for me, and I had to reschedule to the following day. And when it came to the following day, she developed an excruciating migraine and was unable to function. And the next available date that we could find in the diary was at the end of July. So unfortunately, we've got a wait of a few weeks now before I'm going to be able to get that show in the bag, but hopefully it's going to be one well worth waiting for. I do get a lot of suggestions from people as to guests that I should get on this show, and I am quite picky about these things when it comes to this channel, to be honest. I don't just want to have a huge array of guests on. I really want to have people who I feel have something to offer that reinforces the ideas that I already have, or who have some different perspectives on things that are in keeping with the general theme. Because I think if you present too many differing viewpoints, things can start to get very confusing. The waters really start to get muddied for everyone concerned, including the host. And I don't think there's a lot of value in running a channel where you have 50 different guests offering 50 different perspectives on what the hell we're all doing here and what created this place. I'm really trying to whittle things down to a singular line of thinking, if it's possible to do that. Because there's a lot of chatter out there, a lot of noise, in my opinion, a lot of diversion. And as we've said before, opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one. So for that reason, it limits the nature of the guests that I choose to have on. And there's only been a handful so far. I mean, the only other one that I'm really quite keen to get on would be Mark of Forever Conscious Research. And I've tried reaching out to him a few times, and unfortunately I've not had a reply to my messages, so it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. But other than Mark and Isabella Green that's coming up, there aren't too many other guests that I've heard talking about this stuff who I find are in alignment with the way I see things. And I think if I got these people on, they'd be leading my viewers off down certain garden paths where I don't feel there's any value in them going. I mean, it's their choice, of course, but that's just the way I choose to run this channel. So I've been thinking about the movements of the luminaries, the sun and the moon, and you can extend that to the planets if that's what they are, beyond that. So the cycles that they keep brilliant time. You could set your clock by them. In fact, clocks and watches are, of course, based around the movements of the sun. And then we measure days and months and years according to the cycles of the moon. Month is derived from the word moon. Of course, it's been bastardized and watered down over the centuries to cut us off from our connectedness to the way this realm works. But nevertheless, movements of time, as measured by us, as experienced by us, are directly connected and derived from the cycles of the sun and the moon. So the researcher Crow777 describes it as the sky clock. And if you think about the clock that you get on your mobile phone or your laptop or iPad, any other electronic device, it also is incredibly accurate. And that's because the circuit boards in many of these devices are interacting with radio frequencies, which in turn are driven by measurement of the movements of the sun and the moon. So in this case, these devices serve as great analogies for the reality in which we find ourselves, which operates like a piece of digital electronic equipment. So it's that metaphor of a virtual reality, AI controlled simulation, matrix, computer coded type reality, which I've discussed many times before. And I think really thinking about the way the sun and the moon keep perfect time is in keeping with the idea that this is a sort of AI controlled coded reality, which has been left to run itself. Whatever force created it exited long ago because it doesn't need to be here anymore. This place runs itself brilliantly in the way that a mobile phone can leave the factory in China. It's got all the settings intact. Everything's ready to go. The phone arrives with the user. It never goes back to the factory ever again, and it doesn't need to because it's been programmed. And from that point on, it does what it was always intended to do. And that's the case with this realm, Earth. Those of a religious, spiritual persuasion will look at the movements of the sun and the moon and marvel at the majesty of it and say, this can only be the product of an intelligent designer. And there's certainly an argument to be made for that, because whatever consciousness devised the system must have been coming from a place of great intelligence. But does that mean all of this was devised and set into place with our best interests at heart? Is all of this stuff here for our benefit? To help us grow and evolve and learn our lessons and all this stuff we hear from these more new agey sort of spiritual systems? Or are the sun and moon and everything else in place to govern the passage of time so that we age, and to facilitate all the different states that humans go through and other living sentient beings as well, connected with the process of aging? So time only exists within this realm. It's a construct, it's a concept, and without time, we would not age. Without time, there would therefore be no death and no decay. And the suffering and the hardship that comes with it wouldn't be there either. So clearly, whatever force decided on this realm being constructed the way it is, wanted all of that. It wanted the aging process, it wanted time to be facilitated, and all these systems were set into place to facilitate the passage of time. It's pretty clear that everything revolves around the Earth. I mean, I'm not trying to turn this into a dreaded FE debate, but come on. I mean, we're not moving. We're not spinning. We're not hurtling through the infinite vacuum of space in 4 different directions at once with 666 encoded endlessly into the measurements that we're given by mainstream science. Our direct experience alone can confirm this. And when we look at the way the sun moves around the skies over the course of the solar year, it's pretty clear that we, Earth, this experimental petri dish in which we find ourselves, are at the center of all of that. The sun and the moon are dancing around us, and the constellations, the zodiacal houses, and the so-called planets, if that's what they are all moving around us. We are the center of everything. So this place is important. But is it important because it's the creation of a magnificent creator God who had this wonderful vision for what we could be and the potential that we had within us? Or are we the center of everything because we are effectively experimental lab rats and we're being observed and we're having our energy harvested and fed off? Again, ideas we've considered before, but in this context, I'm placing it within the movements of the Luminaries and just considering why they're there. So, although the sun has life-giving properties, we clearly can't live without it. We need the heat, we need the light. As with all things, it seems, in this place, there's a flip side to it. The sun can also do great harm. Ask anyone that's been stranded out in the desert in some equatorial region without water for a few days. It can bring devastating suffering and death. The moon is also not your friend necessarily, particularly if you find yourself homeless, sleeping rough, in the middle of winter, in the middle of the night. The moon is very cold. This has been proven. If you stand in direct moonlight, it's colder than if you stand just outside of it. The moon exudes a coldness, and it also brings decay of living organisms. Plants that have been left out in direct moonlight have very quickly withered and decayed because those are the properties exuded by the moon. So then, is the moon our friend? Is that there for our benefit? We can marvel at how wonderful the cycles of the moon are. They're interesting to look at, the way it changes its appearance every night. But again, is it our friend? There's always a flip side. And when we think about other expressions of the majesty of nature, as many people would see them, we have mountains, hills, valleys, rivers, lakes. I go to Scotland a lot. I love the Scottish Highlands. I just love the geology there. I'm going to Iceland next month again. I visited there a few years ago, and I just love the way Iceland looks. Volcanoes and lakes and rivers and mountains. It's an absolutely fascinating landscape. But even though these things look stupendous, they mask a horror show that will be going on behind the facade. The so-called food chain and all the brutality and cruelty that that system brings. It could have been devised any number of other ways, which precluded the need for living sentient beings to hunt down, terrify, brutalize, and murder each other on a scale of billions every single day, just in order for them to survive another day. We really need to ask ourselves what the motives could have been behind any entity or force that put into place a system like that, when it just was never necessary. And just consider the scale of that suffering, fear, terror, death over the millennia, who knows how many there have been, where this stuff's been going on. You couldn't even measure the amount of casualties, the death count of that horror show of the natural world in trillions upon trillions upon trillions. I don't think there would be a number big enough for a human mind to comprehend to account for the number of living sentient beings that have lost their lives in horrific ways as a result of that system. And this goes on every day right behind the facade. All these lovely views that we have, you see a nice meadow, a nice brook, a nice river, a nice hill, a nice valley. But directly behind all of that, or directly underneath it, this horror show that I've just described will be going on. And this was symbolized brilliantly in a movie, and I'll show a clip from it here on the Odyssey and Rumble versions of this video. Obviously, I can't put it in the YouTube version because it will get taken down. But I'm talking about David Lynch's movie Blue Velvet, released in 1983. David Lynch seemed to know a thing or two about a thing or two. And he coded this into many of his very surreal, very ambiguous movies. I think he was communicating through a lot of these films his understanding of the true nature of this realm. So it might have a beautiful facade, which appears majestic and magnificent, but right behind the surface, if you choose to look there, you're going to find some pretty dark and bleak and horrific stuff that's being hidden by the dazzling facade. So in the opening scene to Blue Velvet, you've got this view of an all-American town, apple pie and beauty queen pageant and all this sort of stuff, these American traditions, picket fences, and everyone's happy and smiling and watering their garden and stuff. But then the scene starts to turn a bit bleak. There's a guy watering his garden and he appears to be having a heart attack, and he collapses on the lawn and the hosepipe is spraying all over the place. A little kid comes out, the dog is drinking out of the hosepipe. And then the camera pans down to the blades of grass that he's lying on. And it burrows beneath the blades of grass. And it shows a whole world of insects like cockroaches and such, and worms. And they're all writhing and wriggling around. And they're right under the grass. And the grass looks very respectable and very pristine from above. But when you burrow beneath the surface, you see the ugly side of things. Isn't that a great metaphor for this world, this existence? It might look pretty impressive on the surface, but there's always going to be something dark and devastating and ugly right beneath the surface. So in the non-YouTube version of this video, let's take a look at that clip now. And things often go wrong with the so-called majesty of nature. So with many of these things I've just mentioned, hills, valleys, volcanoes, volcanic eruptions are an obvious example. But all around the world, there are always so-called natural disasters. And they're even referred to as acts of God, aren't they? Isn't that telling us something about God then, when things like earthquakes can happen, typhoons, hurricanes, floods of, what do we say, biblical proportions? So what's the point of these then? If nature is so majestic and perfect, why do earthquakes have to happen? What lessons does an earthquake teach to a family who loses one of its small children to the effects of one in the middle of a night? Where was the value in that when we could have had a creation put into place? Because remember, the original God of creation is capable of anything, which means if this realm is flawed, it's flawed by design, by intention. The flaws were meant to be there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been. They would have been ironed out. Creator of this realm wanted billions of creatures to brutalize and murder each other every single day. Creator of this realm wanted young children, babies, to die in earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and such. It wanted that. What does that say about this force? If we're going to be honest. This line of thinking can also be extended to our physical bodies. What are these all about? Pain. Just consider that. I get that when the body sends a pain signal to the receptors in the brain from the part of the body that's being affected, it's supposed to be telling the mind, this part of the body needs attention, there's something going wrong here. In some cases, it could be if you've developed some sort of ailment, some sort of disease, you'll get a signal from that part of the body telling you so. On other occasions, it's more obvious, like you drop a hammer on your foot and you bloody well know about it. But this system is flawed as well. So you drop a hammer on your foot, takes 2 or 3 seconds, you know the pain's coming. You drop the hammer, you feel nothing for the first second or so, and you think, oh God, this is going to hurt. Then 2 or 3 seconds later, yep, it kicks in. Oh God, yeah, this hurts. But you get the message, right? You should be more careful. Don't drop a hammer on your foot. You might break your toe, then you won't be able to walk properly. Wouldn't you get that message within 3, 4, 5 seconds max? And couldn't an intelligent mind go, okay, God, yeah, should have been more careful with that hammer. Okay, got the message. But the pain goes on. Sometimes it can go on for days, maybe even weeks if you're really unlucky. And when your body is starting to give up in certain areas, the pain can be excruciating. It's lingering. It goes on way beyond the message that you needed, that you need to seek medical attention for that part of your body because something's wrong with it. I mean, why does it go wrong in the first place? This goes back to the aging and the decay of these bodies, which is built into the fabric of this reality. Why is any of that necessary? Why are these lessons needed? Did we ask for these? Really? Are we benefiting and growing in any way from undergoing these things? Or are we just merely suffering? Is it just about suffering at the hands of some sadistic, malevolent entity, way more so than any kind of magnificent, glorious one that deserves our praise? So human bodies are flawed. Pain doesn't really make a whole load of sense. And people will say, well, there's duality and balance everywhere, in line with the teachings of the Hermetic principles, for example, as espoused by the Kybalion. And I've looked at these and they made sense to me for many years. But if we really think about it, is there direct balance in nature? So everything's supposed to be balanced out by something else. So you can't have good without evil. You can't have light without dark. You can't have up without down, male without female, hot without cold. You get the gist. So think about pain, the worst possible pain that a human being can undergo. I mean, it doesn't even bear thinking about. There are some excruciating methods of pain. Now contrast that with the pleasure that a human body can experience. I suppose most people would point to a sexual orgasm as the best example of that. So let's think about that. A sexual orgasm, that the height of it lasts for what? A few seconds, if you're lucky. I mean, I'm talking about the male orgasm, which is the only one I've got direct experience of, that I'm conscious of anyway. Ladies, I don't know if it's different for you. Maybe you're a bit luckier than us blokes, but, it's over in a few seconds. Very pleasurable, but literally a few seconds. And it's done. Wouldn't it be nice if you dropped a hammer on your foot and the pain is over in the amount of seconds that an orgasm is? Pain lingers, hangs around forever. Pleasure never lasts that long. So they're not in balance with each other, are they? And can all the hills and valleys and the movements of the sun and the moon and beautiful natural phenomena like the aurora borealis or whatever floats your boat balance out all the horror and brutality and fear and suffering and trauma and anxiety that there is in the natural world? Living sentient beings, animals, as well as humans. Just think about all the anxiety, fear, trauma that so many millions of people around the world are going through. Is that ever balanced out by the joy that they experience? We all have some joy, sure, unless we're extremely unlucky. We have moments of happiness, but they really are just that. They're fleeting moments, and they don't really go any way towards adequately balancing out all the crap that we must undergo, the suffering. There's not enough joy there to tip the scales to a point where they balance out all the suffering. And that's been the case throughout known human history. So again, if we're going to be mature about all this and we're going to apply critical thought to the situation, there are certain conclusions which we must draw from this when it comes to the purpose of this place. What it was intended for by the force that set it into place. And just thinking about the sexual orgasm. I mean, what's the ultimate purpose of that anyway? You might be able to have some fun through these experiences if you're lucky enough to be able to tread that path through life without bogging yourself down with the responsibilities that can come with it. But the ultimate purpose of the sexual orgasm, in terms of what the human body was designed for, is of course reproduction. So the idea behind it is that sex has been made so physically pleasurable that as many people as possible are going to want to do it just for the reward, that little carrot that's being dangled of a few seconds of really intense physical pleasure. That has been designed to be enough to motivate people to want to engage in these behaviors, with it in mind that it's going to lead to the creation of many, many new lives, so that new units of consciousness can be born into new physical bodies and therefore undergo new life experiences with all the suffering and the hardship that they involve. And what do they ultimately all end in? Decay, degradation, and death. So even the prize of the enjoyment of a sexual orgasm is ultimately designed to lead to the same thing, which is more suffering, decay, and death. I know this is morbid stuff. I find myself thinking that as I speak it. But I didn't make it this way, nor would I ever have chosen to make it this way. This is the point. I'm not trying to claim that I'm God in any way, but even with my limited mental capacity, I can imagine a scenario which I might create if I were the supreme creator of everything, whereby death and degradation and decay wouldn't be necessary. So you wouldn't need a sky clock to govern the passage of time, because none of it would be necessary, because the ultimate aim of this creation would not be so that everything dies and then presumably has to be reborn in these cycles that just go on, never ending. I would never have devised a physical reality in which living sentient beings, which feel emotion, they feel pain, they have to go through these experiences whereby they have to kill each other just to survive. Why would I? Why would anyone devise that? Why would anyone want that? None of it's necessary, and it never was. And it tells us so much about where we are and what created it. I wish it was some other way. You think I want to be making these videos? You think I want to be talking about this stuff? I'd like to be enjoying my life. I'd like to be having fun. And I have to battle to still find ways of achieving that, as I'm sure many of us do. And that's another point. We can often find ourselves entrained and conditioned towards feeling guilty for enjoying ourselves. Because ways to enjoy yourself, genuinely have fun, seem to be pretty few and far between in these times, because there's a lot of pressure and stress on everyone. There's a lot of anxiety in terms of stuff that's going on in the world if we choose to pay attention to it. And it can get very difficult to switch off and just genuinely enjoy yourself and just park your troubled mind for a while. But we mustn't feel guilty. We mustn't allow ourselves to be gaslit into feeling that we're somehow a bad person if we're having fun when other people are suffering. Keep in mind that it's not our fault other people are suffering. That's not to say that we should turn a blind eye to it. It's not to say that we should be selfish and just not care. We should help and support others when we can. But we must bear in mind that we ourselves did not create a situation whereby these people must be suffering. And so because their suffering wasn't directly caused by us, we should not feel guilty for enjoying ourselves if we can find ways to achieve that. And with many people, it is an if, because it's not a given that you're going to be able to enjoy yourself. It's very difficult to enjoy yourself, I feel, in 2025. Things are changing, things are shifting. Whatever these lives are, whatever this realm is, it's not the same as it used to be. And I think that will probably be the theme of the next video, because I really want to take that idea some places. So we can begin to consider what this realm truly is, I feel, by thinking about it in the apophatic sense. So this is something Mark Passio has talked about a lot on whatonearthishappening.com. He talks about the apophatic method of describing something by eliminating what it is not. So you explain it by describing what it isn't, and when you've stripped all that away, you see what's left, and you start from there. So if we apply that method to this realm and all the things that I've been talking about, are we to conclude that it's the creation of a loving, wondrous, majestic, glorious, all-powerful God, deserving of our praise because he or it cares about us so much, loves us so much, created this place for our benefit, for our growth, for our good? Or are we to view the way this world is, the way our human bodies are, the way the food chain is, and are we to conclude that in fact it's the creation of an extremely malevolent, extremely insecure, emotionally unstable, jealous, narcissistic, psychopathic monster. Is that a logical conclusion to arrive at based on the evidence that's available to us? I would say it is. So in the apophatic method, we strip away the idea that it's the creation of a loving, wondrous, benevolent God. And then the idea that it's the creation of a malevolent force or entity remains on the table. Who, in their right mind, based on the evidence before them, can really conclude that this place has been devised for our benefit in any way, or for the benefit of a child born into a satanic ritual abuse family who undergoes horrific trauma from early childhood, or an animal kept in a wet market in China, for example, or factory farmed, living a miserable life in disgusting, filthy conditions, and then going off to meet its end in a terrifying slaughterhouse. Is this reality there for their benefit either, I wonder? Where are the lessons that they learned from that? How does it enrich their souls in any way, those type of experiences? Or do they happen because this realm was intended for something else and was created by something other than a majestic, benevolent, loving God? Okay, I'll leave the message on that bright, cheery note, as usual. We really must find some positive ways of ending these videos, mustn't we? It's not the easiest job, but I think the central message I'd like to put across here is that when we can find ways of having fun, whatever works for us individually, we must pursue that without any kind of guilt. And that's what I do by these days pretty much burying myself into music. That's where I find my passion. I enjoy getting lost in good movies as well. I'm very picky about my movies, but when I find a good one, I really like to get absorbed in that. So that does bring us to the feedback section of the video, actually, which continues to be a very popular part of these. I get a lot of correspondence in terms of messages left below the videos on the various platforms, and also direct emails. If you want to leave some feedback to this video, you can do it in the chat thread on the video platform below, or you can drop me a direct email to markdevlin2022@protonmail.com. That address will be in the description box below. So on to the feedback then, and this is a sort of ragtag selection, as usual, of comments that people have made. First one then, a rhetorical question. We are told that in the afterlife, spirit, heaven, nirvana, or whatever name you give to it, there is no death, no suffering, no disease, no war, no famine, no pain, no abuse, no torture, no afflictions of the physical body due to age or infirmity whatsoever. So my question is, why must we come into this realm and suffer these alien conditions? Conditions which form no part whatsoever of the realm, so we are told, that is our real home. What the hell is the point? Why can we just not be left alone to exist in a state of bliss? I suppose a good analogy there would be you're in a 5-star hotel, you're loving it, you're dining on the finest banquet every evening, you've got golf courses and a beautiful beach outside and wonderful spa facilities, and you're having a great time with wonderful people, the finest drink, the finest food. And you say to yourself, do you know, I'd like to leave this place and go and stay in a filthy, brutal, horrific, squalid prison in some stinking shithole hell corner of the world somewhere, just to see what it's like, you know. Be a right old laugh, wouldn't it? I'd like to do that. So that's what I'm going to do. See you later, folks. I think that analogy helps to put that one into perspective. And my reply to this person on the platform was, exactly. Not to sound too nihilistic, but what actually is the point of anything? Why does there have to be anything? Is nothingness really so bad? At least nothingness precludes all the suffering, pain, and torment that goes on in this place. I've thought to myself for a while, and many people will find this a nihilistic viewpoint, but once I'm done with this life, I quite like the idea of slipping into nothingness, into a complete void, just ceasing to exist in any form whatsoever. People find that horrific, but why? Like I say, at least then there's no capacity for any kind of fear, pain, suffering anymore because there's nothing. Yeah, there's no joy or happiness either, but what's so wrong with just ceasing to exist? Why does anything have to exist? Why is there anything? Why are we here? Why is this place here? Why is there anything at all? How many people have ever asked that question in their lives? Next comment. New Age gaslighting sadly extends to the subject of grief, loss, and bereavement. I found little comfort in religion, but none in the New Cage movement. As I was told, my deceased loved one and I planned this before we came here. Truly revolting shite it is. No victims, you asked for it. Yeah, right. Coldly cruel, and also great for absolving personal responsibility to help others, isn't it? And this person says, would love to hear you interview some of the more popular new cagers so they can be challenged or debunked on the crap they're spewing. Now, I've heard enough of that from them to not want to have them on this channel to spew any more of it, thanks. But I do take the point that is being made there. Somebody else has written, I was part of the New Age movement for many years as I became a Reiki healer 20 years ago. Over the years, I questioned the lessons and karma, and it didn't make sense. I use frequency to remove negative entities or energies from people, and I realized that the chakra system was set up to attract these energies into our bodies. I've since had mine removed, and the difference is astounding. I'm still surrounded by people totally on board with the New Age concepts, and I feel myself detaching more and more from the community I built over many years. Just like I removed myself from many long-term friendships during COVID. It seems the split is true, and you either see the truth or you stay in your 3D manipulated ideologies. I'm definitely not coming back here to this hellhole. I know my way out now, thank goodness. So the idea of having your chakras removed on the ground that they provide a portal for certain entities to attach themselves to you is obviously a controversial one. And it's not a subject area I've looked into myself to any great scientific degree, so I don't want to offer any personal perspective on it. It's one that I need to investigate more myself. Doubtless people out there will have their own viewpoints on whether there's validity to that idea or not. So somebody else writes, and there does seem to be a trend emerging here, New Age is total bullshit. I too followed it. Visualization. If it worked, everyone who used it would have everything they wished for. And if psychics were genuine, they'd be millionaires, as they would know all the lottery numbers. I stand on Team Good, and I wish I could remove some of these so-called elites before I expire, as God ain't doing shit about it. And yes, I'm Christian, barely. My reply to that was, yes, God is an absentee landlord, and we've been left to sort shit out here all on our own without any kind of a guidebook. And that's correct about visualization. So a child dying of cancer visualized that, did they? And if they visualized a cure, it would have come. Don't people think that everyone suffering from cancer would have visualized themselves being cured from it? And yet the rates of people dying go up every year and not down. So, Doesn't seem to be working too well, that one, does it? Somebody has written, my synchronicities. I always get the last one of something I need at a store, any store. I grab a random pile of something and it's the exact quantity I need. So a pile of clothes hangers, paper clips, spoons, etc. I refill a soap dispenser that has a small amount left, and the amount left in the refill bottle is the exact amount I need. The list goes on. There are many. I will also think about something I need to know, such as, can I bring cupcakes to my daughter's school? And the next time I drop her off, there are cupcakes sitting in the office for a birthday. So my question was answered. I'm not really sure what to think of these. They're all creepy and convenient. Well, for me, this is coding. Again, synchronicities can be explained by the mathematical computer style coding of this reality at its base core before it plays out into apparent physical reality. I posed a question a few videos back. Why do bad things happen to good people? Somebody's written in with a short answer. It is that people have had their aura or energy drained using direct contact by people who have joined the club or taken the offer, which is a very literal process, so to speak. Imagine the old Ready Brek man. People of my age might remember a TV ad for Ready Brek cereal that used to be on, and there was a guy that walked around. He'd had his Ready Brek in the morning. It's a cold winter's morning, and it created this warm glow around him, an aura. And he was the Ready Brek man. So this is a good metaphor of people who have an aura and people who don't. And if it happens to you that you have your aura drained by one of the others, it has far-reaching effects on your life until your aura recovers over time from interaction with other people. Meanwhile, it means that your luck bottoms out in everything if your aura is taken away. So your health could suffer, you could lose your job, those close to you will suffer, and so on. Those people that do the draining are around us a lot more than you would think. Yes, there are undertones of they live, but it's not really like that. They're just people who, when given an offer to have an easy life and an advantage over those around them, said yes, and didn't think about the price they would have to pay for it or ask what it says in the small print. I guess this would tie into the very real world example of targeted individuals and gang stalking that we hear goes on. So someone unfortunate enough to find themselves the victim of this type of situation, they get followed by groups and they get taunted and abused and just traumatized. Their lives are made hell by these organized stalking gangs. And often these people don't know what they've done to warrant being targeted in this way. Nothing obvious. But nevertheless, they find themselves in the crosshairs of this type of targeting. So this is like a cosmic version of that, I guess. And in many cases, those that are doing the stalking of these targeted individuals have been coerced into the role by others. So they might have been paid to do it. They might have been promised great things. They might have been told that they can get out of some trouble that they might be in with the law in some way, or have a debt cancelled if they undertake in these activities. Or they might have just bought some bullshit lie that this TI has done something terrible and actually warrants being followed and stalked and monitored. So they've signed up for an easy life within this metaphor. They think the easiest option is to say yes, do what they're being asked to do, and there'll be some benefits for them in the long run without really thinking it through. I think that's what this individual is getting at. And this leads nicely into the final brief comment, reinforces the last one. It wouldn't surprise me that those in charge are souls that have sold out to the archons for lives living in luxury and wealth. And I think that's what the so-called elites are. And certainly politicians, self-serving politicians, You know, the likes of Johnson and Blair and Starmer and Hancock and all these people. So many names you could mention. They are doing the bidding of the forces that control this realm. Call it the Demiurge if you like, call it the Archons, for as easy a path as possible through this life for themselves. So their class, their type, have realized that the smoothest transition from birth to death in this realm is to align yourself with the purpose of this realm, which is to facilitate fear, suffering, poverty, hardship. If you realize that's the game, you realize those are the rules of engagement, then you set yourself up to stay outside of all of that by screwing over other people, being selfish, looking out for yourself. And if you really have no conscience, or you realize that there's no benefit to trying to live your life in a beneficial, noble, helpful way towards others, then you can have a fairly easy run through life, I guess, if you're fortunate enough to be born into the right family in the right part of the world. You can have a fairly smooth run if you can live with yourself, if you can look at yourself in the mirror every morning. That goes a long way to explaining just how these politicians, business leaders, so-called elites of all types are okay with doing what they do to other people, because they're merely thinking about what provides the easiest way through life for themselves, and everyone else be damned, literally. All right, so that's God 18. As I say, cheery and fun as ever. Suggestions for ways to have fun are always welcomed. Feel free to drop those in the comments below. Hope people have found value in this one. I don't even know how long I've been going, but this has been a real stream of consciousness, and I hope it's made some sense. I've been some places with this video that I've not been in previous ones, I feel. A lot of stuff I wanted to get off my chest, and it's now in the can, preserved for posterity, and it's done. So God 19 is next. When that will be, who knows? Keep an eye on the channels for plenty more content in the meantime. If you want to support me on the Patreon, feel free to do so, link below. Like and subscribe the video, please. Tell others about it if you feel they would benefit from hearing this information, and see you next time. Cheers for now.